Imagine waking up tomorrow and looking at your hands. Your fingers are still there. Your nails are still there. But your fingerprints are completely gone. Your fingertips are now perfectly smooth. It sounds harmless. But suddenly, you'd have a much harder time gripping things, especially when they're wet. And that's the strange thing about fingerprints. They look like tiny random lines, but they're actually part of a surprisingly useful system your body built before you were even born. So why does your skin have all those weird little ridges? Let's find out. Before fingerprints existed, our ancestors still had hands. But hands are only useful if you can actually control what you're holding. Imagine trying to climb a wet tree with completely smooth fingertips. Your hand touches the surface and immediately slip. Not exactly a great survival strategy. Your fingertips aren't flat for a reason. They're covered in tiny raised ridges called friction ridges. These ridges create patterns that help your fingers interact with surfaces. And here's where things get interesting. Your fingerprints aren't really there to make your fingers stick to things like glue. Instead, they help your skin manage friction. When you grab something, the ridges increase the interaction between your fingertip and the object. That can give you better control when you're holding, pushing, pulling, or climbing. And there's another surprising advantage. Your fingertips contain an enormous number of nerve endings. That makes them incredibly sensitive. You can feel tiny changes in texture, pressure, and movement. Your brain can basically turn your fingertips into a kind of biological sensor. Try rubbing your finger across a rough surface. You don't need to see it. Your brain can tell that it's rough just from the tiny vibrations moving through your skin. And fingerprints may help make those vibrations easier for your nervous system to detect. So your fingers aren't just grabbing things. They're also constantly collecting information. But why do fingerprints have those strange loops, whirls, and arches? Why not just make every fingertip smooth? Well, that's where development gets weird. Your fingerprints begin forming before you're born. And the final pattern is influenced by a combination of genetics and the environment inside the womb. Things like the growth of your fingers, pressure, movement, and the exact conditions during development can affect the pattern. That's why even identical twins don't have exactly the same fingerprints. They share almost the same DNA, but their fingerprints are different. Your hands basically create a tiny signature before you even enter the world. And once those patterns form, they generally stay with you for life. Your skin grows, you get taller, you age, your fingerprints grow with you. But the basic pattern remains remarkably stable. That's why fingerprints became so useful for identifying people. Every time you touch a glass, a phone screen, or a door handle, you can leave behind a tiny pattern made by your fingertips. It's basically your hand saying, "Yep, I was here." But fingerprints aren't only useful on dry surfaces. Your fingertips also have sweat glands. When you touch something, you can leave behind tiny amounts of sweat and oils from your skin. And those invisible traces can reveal the pattern of your fingerprint, which is one reason fingerprints became so important in forensic science. But here's something even stranger. You don't have fingerprints only on your fingers. You also have similar friction ridges on your palms and the soles of your feet, because apparently your body decided that gripping and walking were important enough to give their own specialized skin patterns. And there's a reason babies don't come out of the womb with perfectly smooth fingertips. Those ridges develop while they're still growing. So by the time you're born, your fingers already have a pattern that's uniquely yours. Think about how strange that is. Before you learned your name, before you took your first step, Before you even opened your eyes, your hands were already carrying something that could identify you for the rest of your life. And scientists still study fingerprints because they're more complicated than they look. Those tiny lines aren't just decoration. They're part of a system that helps you grip objects, sense the world, and interact with your environment. So the next time you look at your fingertips, don't think of them as random wrinkles. They're more like microscopic terrain maps built directly into your skin. And every person gets a different map, which means your hands have been carrying a tiny identity card since before you were even born. So why do humans have fingerprints? Because your hands aren't just tools.